And that's sometimes... And sometimes that's all you can ask for with these kind of films, because there's nothing worse than putting on a film that just bores you to tears. And thankfully this movie does not do that. I couldn't actually find much about this movie, aside from the fact that it exists. The one thing I did find that I found a little interesting was the director, Justin G. Dick, or perhaps Dyke, it's spelled D-Y-C-K, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. He is the director for this movie. He's also the director for several of those, like, low-budget Christmas movies that you see, like, everywhere, like on Hallmark and whatnot. Like, for example here, if I just read a few examples off the list for you. We have A Christmas Prince, Christmas in the Wilds, Christmas in the Rockies, Christmas in London. Getting a theme here, aren't we? Christmas in Paris. He likes ones that are set in certain areas, I can tell. The one thing that surprised me about this is Super Detention. Super Detention, which is essentially, if you boil it down to bare essentials, it's basically The Breakfast Club if it took place in Xavier's School for Mutants. So, you know, hooray. It is not, like I said before, it's not a bad movie either. It was fairly entertaining, I would say, since I was not, ever telling myself, like, oh, when is this over, or anything like that. I was pretty well engaged with it throughout the whole movie. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and get on with the plot a bit here, why don't we? We open on, of course, the school, and you see through this opening sequence we're going to meet our 5 main students that we're going to be following for this film. Now, I will say I really liked the superpowers for this movie. It felt pretty creative, some of these ideas here. I'll admit, it's not like something you see in other places, So that's one thing I can say for sure, is that they were definitely giving them more original powers. I mean, they're not all original, but they are some more original than what you expect, perhaps. So, first up we have Andrasta. She is called the Mind Puppeteer. She has strings that come out of her fingers. And if those strings latch into her opponent, she can control them. She can make them divulge secrets to her, she can make them use their powers, all that kinds of stuff. She can also look into their minds, as we find out later. So, it's a fun bit. The second student we have is Deja Vu. He can create copies of himself. He's also the class president. Next up is a young boy named Metabolism. So one thing is, I don't know if these are all just aliases or if these are actual names, but if this man's name is actually Metabolism, I feel bad for him. But anyways, his whole idea is that he can eat. He has to eat food in order to become... Basically, he's the Hulk, but he has to eat in order to transform instead of getting angry. That's the main idea. It honestly reminds me of something you'd see on, like, The Boys or Gen V or something like that. In fact, there is actually a character from Gen V that slightly reminds me of. Her name is Emma. If you haven't watched Gen V, she can become small if she vomits enough, and she can grow gigantic if she eats enough. So it just reminded me of her in a way, because I've been watching that recently. Anyways, the next guy is Klon. His whole power is shooting psychic blasts at his opponents. It basically just makes like a little wind orb. It looks like he's basically what do you call it? Airbending. Sorry. It looks like he's airbending almost. He just shoots out like a ball of air or something. They say it's a psychic blast though. It looks cool. And lastly we have Liv. Hers is the most metal power in my opinion. She can summon shadow demons from the shadow realm to do her bidding. Like, just let that sink in. Like, everyone else's power is just like, oh, I can get big. Oh, I can shoot psychic blasts. Oh, I can control people. Oh, I can split my body into 3 or whatever. And hers is, I summon demons. Like, that's just crazy to me. But I love it. I love it. Believe me. So, I've introduced you to our main cast. Let's get on with how we meet them. So first thing we hear in the school is about a hero named Kalis, who is coming to visit. You see, Kalis is looking to retire. He's the most famous superhero in this universe, apparently. And he's looking to choose his replacement. And he's come to the school to do that. So, we see Andrastra. I'm gonna just call her Andy, honestly. I hate her name. It's a mouthful. Andy. We see Andy outside, and she's protesting Kalis' arrival as she feels that their powers are not a selling point. She sees the idea of using your powers for fame and all that as, well, basically selling out. That's another thing that reminded me of The Boys a bit there too, because a lot of the times they use the powers in the wrong manner, and they're just in it to be famous and all that kind of stuff. Anywho, we also see her use her strings to control 2 other students into protesting with her. Principal catches her, and that's how she gets attention right there. Then we get to meet Deja Vu, who, as I mentioned before, is the student class president. He has 1 copy of himself outside in the courtyard, just kind of keeping an eye out, and he has another copy of himself inside the office, trying to hack into the principal's computer to make him be the first person in line to see Kalis. Which, later on in the movie, after having met Kalis in the movie later on, it's kind of funny because there is no first person who gets to meet Kalis, unless you count the principal. We'll get to that. Next we meet... Oh yes, and the principal catches him in the office while he's trying to hack into the computer. He does successfully move his name to the top, but then he immediately gets caught, and of course is given detention. So, next we meet Metabolism. As I mentioned before, his whole thing is if he eats enough, he basically becomes a Hulk, in a way. And he has stolen 40 lunches from different students. And it's not like he took their cafeteria food, no, he took their home food, it looked like, because it was little brown bag lunches, So, man's was starving, I guess. Anyways, of course the principal catches him, and once again, detention. Next on the docket is Klon, who's already in the principal office when we meet him. The principal rattles off a few things that he's done today, involving blowing up a car and throwing a teacher, as well as also throwing said car to make it blow up. This, of course, lands him in detention, but I have to think, shouldn't that, bar for suspension? Something, at least. Because, there's no way you can tell me that people just get a slap on the wrist for blowing up a car. Come on, no. Kids in my school got into fights and would be sent to freaking alternative school. So you can't tell me that man blows up a car and he gets detention. Got off fucking easy, if you ask me. Lastly, we meet Liv, of course, who, as I mentioned before, can summon the demons. She gets attention after a student tries to hit on her, so she summons a demon to basically just tug at his leg. It really doesn't do anything, it just kind of grabs his leg and just kind of pulls on him. It doesn't even try to drag him to hell or whatever, it just kind of sits there and wraps its arm around his leg and is hi, basically. Doesn't actually speak, but you get my drift. So of course she gets attention because the principal catches her and all that. I think it's funny she doesn't actually call out the demon either, she just kind of walks away. After we get to see everyone get their detention slips, we see the principal, he's running to his office as the phone's ringing. And on the phone is the previous principal, who it's not really explained what his role is, but I'm assuming he's the superintendent, apparently. That's what I'm assuming. If they ever say what his role is now, they just offhandedly mention that he used to run the school. So, hell if I know. But his name is Mr. Kent, and I have to wonder if that's... But I have to feel like that's probably a reference to Clark Kent, Superman, And if it's not, that's a hell of a coincidence, so I'm pretty sure it's a reference though. Anywho, he calls to make sure that everything's prepared for Kalis' arrival. And of course, the principal assures him, everything will be fine, but everything will not be fine, as we will see. We now get to see all of our kids in detention. And here's the one thing I thought was odd, is they keep saying it's detention, but it takes place in the middle of the day, during the regular school day, this detention class is happening, which is not how detention works, first of all. Detention, if you ever received it, you would know, detention happens after school. And this most definitely is not after school. Because you can't tell me they would be keeping everyone after school just for a visit from a superhero. No, that's something that happens during the day. Because otherwise then people could leave and that would kind of harm the other problem that we have later. So, this school, apparently, just has detention in the middle of the day. Moving on from that pothole. Everyone's in there, and Deja, of course, is all sad because he really wants to be the next Kalis or whatever. And he can't believe that he's going to miss seeing him and all this stuff. It's well, then you shouldn't have been a dumbass. Oh well. But Liv and Andy get into a fight as well because Andy keeps talking about the idea of selling out your powers. And of course, Liv doesn't like that, because Liv actually does want to become a big-time superhero at some point. We also learn here that Metabolism is a new kid to the school. In fact, he even tries to hit on Liv a few times, but unsuccessfully. But it looks like he does have a shot near the end. Not with her, but with somebody else. Possibly. But there's also another kid who doesn't really become important until a little later, but she's asleep in the room with him. Her name is Lunam, but we'll meet her later. But before Liv and Andy can start fighting, the principal comes in and breaks them up. But then he basically just tells them, hey, do whatever the fuck you want, I gotta go. He just leaves. He doesn't even... There's not anyone else there to watch them. He just leaves them in there by themselves. And basically just tells them, do whatever you want, just don't leave the room. And I think it's very irresponsible, first of all. And plus, you just saw them fighting. You know they're just gonna go back to fighting, which they do. Not right away, but eventually. And it's well, you did tell them they could do anything, so you brought this on yourself, So, of course, as soon as he leaves to go back to do the whole Kalis announcement and everything, because Kalis is coming to the school, he's going to be in the auditorium and all that stuff, so right as he leaves to prepare for that, They, of course, immediately are like, let's bust out. But we find out that the principal's power is that he can lock things. And that sounds really stupid, first of all. But it actually is pretty interesting later, but we'll get to that. But let's just say he can't, that's not just doors that he can lock. And unlock as well. But, so they attempt to pick the lock, but are unsuccessful because it's a super lock, so basically it's not pickable. That's the idea. So Kalis arrives on the school while they're in detention, of course. He has 3 guards and an assistant. We learned that he brought along this examination machine to help kind of streamline the process of getting his successor. He then goes and follow them to the auditorium. Kalis takes the stage, makes his announcement, and the principal tells everyone, go ahead, come on up here and use the machine, and we're going to find out who the new Kalis will be, basically, who the successor will be. Of course, every single child just runs to the stage, like trampling each other and shit. And while everyone's getting checked in, the principal decides he should return back to the detention room. The principal decides he should return to the detention room. The principal walks in on yet another fight, and this time we have Andy puppeting Deja and Metabolism to fight Klon, because they got into a fight, or Klon got into a fight with Liv. It was just a verbal disagreement, but they started to get physical, and then Andy had to make everyone fight for her, of course. Anywho, he comes in and he decides he's just gonna have to stay in the room and babysit them. Of course, he's not happy with this because he wanted to be there with Kalis too, you know? We cut back to all the kids in the auditorium. Everyone's finished now, and Kalis even has the teachers come up and use it as well, because he says, you never know. The teachers might be a suitable successor as well. So he has them come up. Basically what the machine does is you scan your hand on it. It just looks like one of those large, 90s computers or something. Because it's wheeled around and everything. It's so bulky for what it is. But it kind of makes sense later. But not much, honestly. I feel like it didn't have to be that huge. But anyways. So now that we discover that this examination machine was actually a power-stealing machine, and he's stolen everybody's powers, including the teachers, of course. So the only people with powers are, guess what? The kids in detention. And, of course, the, principal. So, Kalis gives his whole speech about he's going to take over the school, and he's going to turn the school into a fortress, apparently. Which I really don't see what the big point of that was. He seems to have, kind of a Homelander type of complex. I'm sorry I keep bringing up the boys, but that's what he... It's really, I think I just watched too much of that stuff recently, so. But he reminds me of that a little bit, not nearly as psycho. He's like a PG version of Helllander, let's just put it that way. Because he's his whole thing is he wants to be the only one in power, and it just reminded me of the whole speech, the only man in the sky is me speech that Homelander has. But, yeah. Anyways, his whole idea is he's going to take everyone's powers so he can be the only super person that'll be worshipped and whatnot. And he's going to make their school into his new fortress of solitude type deal. Anyways, they leave the students in there with their bodyguards, and him and his assistant, Miss Potter, go off. Miss Potter discovers on the roster that there's 310 powers were taken, but there's 316 students who are supposed to be in school. And everyone was in attendance, so that means that there's 6, when they find that the 6 students that are missing are in detention, of course. So Kalis has Miss Potter go to the detention room and invite them over to come meet Kalis personally. They of course try the more orthodox method of just inviting them peacefully. But when that doesn't work, Miss Potter lasers the principal in the eye. She has laser eyes, so she shoots him in his eyes, temporarily blinding him. So then the other kids start to fight back a bit. Klon knocks her out with a psychic blast, and then Andy puts one of her puppet strings into her and makes her tell them Kalis' plan. And she tells them that even if they surrender, Kalis will still wipe out the entire school in a show of strength. So he's not just going to steal their powers and make this into a fortress. He's going to murder them regardless. Again, this is kind of Homelander in my eyes. Anyways, the principal gets into the vents to go ahead and try to make it back to his office stealthily without getting completely sneaked by the guards and all that, basically. Meanwhile, the students have Andy puppet Mrs. Potter to take them back to the auditorium. So they all go to the auditorium. Along with Lunam, she finally wakes up as well. So all 6 of them and Mrs. Potter go to the auditorium. We also now learn that Lunam's power is that she has the werewolf's curse or whatever. Basically, she can become a werewolf at night, full moon of course, but only for very briefly. It's for a few minutes or something. It's which has to be the lamest type of werewolf curse to have, because most werewolf curses, you transform the whole night, as far as I know. We just covered a freaking werewolf. You're not gonna listen to the last episode, Wolf Cop. Anyways, but it just seems like a very lame version of a wolf power. Plus, she doesn't even turn into a wolf. She just kind of gets a little more wild. I don't really know how to explain it. I guess they didn't have the makeup department to make her look like a werewolf, so they just kind of had her raw a bit and mess up her hair. That's what it felt like. Anywho, we have all the kids, including Loon and Miss Potter, now go back to the auditorium. And they all meet Kalis. At first, they try to fight Kalis a little bit with Miss Potter by puppeting her to shoot Kalis to blind him temporarily. While he's blinded, they just try to hack into the computer, to the machine, I should say, to get it to spit out all the powers, basically. But it's then that we learn that Kalis didn't even tell his assistant the real passcode to get to bypass anything. So she didn't even know the actual password, basically. So no one knows the password except for Kalis. Metabolism was able to get into some food from the auditorium audience. Sorry. Metabolism was able to get some food from the audience. Right as Kalis' eyes start to get better, metabolism transforms. You don't really get to see it, but you can it gets basically kind of blurry. But he just gets larger and muscular and just tackles the fuck out of him. So while he's taking care of that, Andy uses Mrs. Potter to fight off some guards, makes her laser blast a few other guards and stuff. And we have a second one who wrestles with Deja, and the other one fights. Someone he has nunchucks every single time we see him. It's just the funniest. It's just so random. But finally, Kalis is able to get free from metabolism. Honestly, didn't take that much. And punches the ground, sending a whole shockwave, knocking everyone over so that everyone can stop fighting it, right? Klon finally starts to help people. Because he was just sitting back there. Because he's like a moody little shit, honestly. Most of this movie, he's just being a teenage angst machine. And he just won't shut up about, oh, I want to help, oh, I don't want to be here. And it's bro, we get it. Just stop. But, anywho, he fires blasted him and finally tries to face Kalis one-on-one, but the other one's they're like, no, we can't let you do that. And so Andy ends up puppeting him and dragging him out of the auditorium as the rest of them flee with her. Sorry. We then get to see the principal coming out of the vents, but he's immediately caught by 2 guards, because he doesn't come out of the vent inside his office. No, he decides, I'm going to come out of the vent in the hallway, like a smart person would do, you know? But he's immediately caught by 2 guards. But here's where we get to see his power in a really good fucking way, honestly. Because when you hear that he has this locking power, it sounds lame, right? Because he can lock doors and unlock doors, and it's wow, you have the same powers of a skeleton key, congratulations. But Turns out that power is not limited to just doors. You see, the guard has him kind of like pinned against the wall and is about to he's keeps berating the guard and egging him on, And then the guard goes to punch him, but he punches the wall instead because he moves out of the way. He's able to lock the guy's arm in place, and as he continues to try to fight him, he keeps locking different parts of his body in place until he's all twisted up basically like a little pretzel, as well as the other guard. So it's just fucking hilarious to me, because I was sitting here thinking, wow, this is the lamest power ever. Then he pulls that shit, I'm like, well, fuck, you were held on us, dude. That's actually a really good ability. It feels like some My Hero Academia type shit, honestly. Anyways, so he gets out of that pretty easily and goes to his office. Meanwhile, Liv and Metabolism are in the library. They start having a little bonding moment and stuff. But they're caught by one of the guards. The only one that didn't get locked up by the principal. So we see that Kalis has passed on abilities to the other guards. Now this is after of course, the locking unfortunately does wear off. So the other two get powers as well, unfortunately. So they all place their hands on the scanner and get a different power. So now this new souped-up guard is trying to block the path of Liv and Metabolism, and he's able to blind Metabolism with this electric shock ability that I guess he got from the stream. Liv summons a full shadow demon to fight him off. It's basically just one giant shadow that just kind of holds him there. It just kind of stays there for the rest of the movie. So that was a very easy problem to deal with, apparently. Yes. So the second guy comes by and just basically beats the shit out of Liv, more or less, because she gets her ankle, it seems broken or sprained or something. Either way, she's limping pretty bad, so Liv and Metabolism are trying to, escape with that guard chasing after them. The other one's still with the demon, so he's stuck there. Andy and Klon are on the run as well together. They've gone back to the detention room along with Deja. Andy and Klon, of course, get into a fight again. He leaves the room, and Klon moves into that nunchuck guard and Mrs. Potter, and they start to fight. The nunchuck guard has this weird airbending powers kind of thing going. I really don't know what the fuck he's supposed to be doing, but he's supposed to be there at just until because when they're fighting, he literally takes Klon's breath away, and then Mrs. Potter sees inside the detention room, because it's right outside the detention room, of course, that Klon has got. And she sees inside the window and sees that Deja and Andy are in there, and she tells them, use your powers to break down that door, to break that building. She tells them because she sees them in the window. She sees Andy and Deja in the window, so she tells the bodyguard to use his powers to destroy the detention room. And he starts doing this weird, I don't know what it's called, dancing motion, where he's gathering up winds. That's why I'm saying it's airbending, basically. But he doesn't get a chance to do that, because Klon is able to blast them both away before he can fully power up or whatever. But, so Andy, Deja, and Klon all meet up, and they all go off to find the others as well. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, the principal is able to get a call through to Mr. Kent, but it's revealed that Mr. Kent is also in on this. I'm not really sure what his gain is here, because, what does he gain from this if Kalis goes through with this? Because isn't Kent also a superpowered being, I imagine? So wouldn't he also murder him? I don't really see what the appeal is here, my guy, to help with this man. Because even if he promised, oh yeah, you'll be fine, I wouldn't trust this man at all. Because you clearly cannot trust him, as he's showing on here many times. But regardless, after that, we go back to Liv and Metabolism. They are on the run from that guard still, but they get into a food storage room, but they can't tell it's just yet. It's dark in there. But once they turn on the lights, they have a little brief discussion where they're kind of heart-to-heart conversation deal. And they turn on the lights, and boom, It's a storage closet full of canned goods. And of course, Vitalis is, gorgeous himself, basically. Yeah. All you see is a giant fist just punching through the door and knocking the fuck out of the guard. It's great. And then they meet up with Deja, Andy, and Klein. So the kids all go to the office, the principal's office. The principal's gone now, but they all go there and they find out that Kent is in on it. Meanwhile, Klein is looking in the same office. He's in the file cabinet, so reading through the file. As soon as he reads it, he storms off, and of course he won't fucking tell anybody what's going on. He's being his little angsty ass self again. He's honestly really fucking annoying, if you ask me. Like, he looks cool, he has cool powers, but he's just fucking stupid. Like, he's the epitome of those guys who are just like, you never understand me. My life is too dark and personal for you, or some shit like that. It's real fucking tryhard. Anyways, Andy tries to puppet him to see what's on the file, but she's not able to. Instead, she sees a big flashback sequence when she's reading his mind, and it's all the times that Klein ran to Andy. So basically, what this means, of course, is that that Klein had a big crush on Andy. Aww. Not that anyone gives a shit, but let's work in our forced love interest in here somehow, I guess, right? Anyways, you see one of the students approaching them, and it turns out that Kalis is using telepathy to control and talk through the student. So he reveals that he has the principal kidnapped in the auditorium, and that they need to come to him and surrender their powers, basically. So they of course return. They all return, but Klein decides he's gonna leave and be an angsty little shit again. So he actually leaves the campus, and the other ones all go back to the auditorium. And they all arrive. Kalis tells them all. He basically gives them an ultimatum. He says, if you give up your powers, I'll let the rest of this school go free. And they, of course, are stupid, and they agree. So they all get their powers taken away. And guess what? He goes back on his word. Wow, who could have seen that coming? So, of course, he plans he's going to kill everyone now. But, wouldn't you know it, Klein comes back and starts to fight with Kalis again. Now it's revealed that Klein is Kalis' clone, because it was so well hidden with that name. Although I will say, if he's a clone, something went wrong, because Klein looks nothing like Kalis. Like, not even in the slightest. If anyone kinda looks like Kalis, it'd be Deja. He looks a little bit closer to him, at least. He's at least got the same, complexion and hair color. Klein, on the other hand, is a dark-haired, olive-skinned man, whereas Kalis is a pale, kind of sandy blonde man. So, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about the whole cloning procedure. If it doesn't seem like it's very reliable, At least with making ones that actually look likes, That's what it means when they're a clone. Anyways, they're equally matched, of course, as they fight. But in the end, Kalis is able to force Klein to scan his hand into the machine. But as he does this, we learn that Lunam still has her power, because her power is a curse. So you can't steal that because it's a curse. So she tackles him and claws him up. And like I said, they say she's a werewolf, but she doesn't really transform much. But she does tackle him and growl and scratch at him. But it looks like he doesn't really do anything to him. Because when he gets back up, he has no visible injuries or anything. So, yay. He's fine. It doesn't even phase him that much, except for once she gets off of him, it's done. And she only transforms for 30 seconds. That's gotta be the lamest werewolf power to have. No wonder it's a curse. It doesn't do shit for you. Anyways, the principal is able to get loose of his ropes. He gets to the machine to release the powers. How he knew how to do that? Not explained. Doesn't matter though. Everyone gets their powers back, and Kalis decides to just surrender. Andy and Claude have a nice little intimate moment and they share a kiss. So I think it's the next day where all the kids are hanging out together again. They invite Claude to come with them to the movies, but he of course has detention again because he's still an angsty piece of shit. So he has detention again, just by himself this time. But they're able to get him to ditch it, and he goes out with the others. So they have a nice little walk into the sunset moment, But then we cut to see Kalis in the hospital. He's got these restraints on, so he can't use his powers anymore. And you see a nurse getting briefed on him and how they're going to treat him and all this kind of stuff. Then we get the reveal that this nurse was actually Miss Potter in disguise. And there's an implication here that it seems she's going to break him out. So, who knows, maybe someday we'll get a Super Detention Part 2. So that is the end of this movie. And honestly, like I said before, it wasn't that bad. It was very entertaining honestly. Like, I didn't find myself, wondering, like, when is this going to be over, or why am I watching this, or anything like that. So I have to say, sometimes that's all you can ask for with these. It was the bare minimum of, it wasn't like a groundbreaking piece of cinema. It's not like I'm going to be going and singing its praises to, like, high heaven or anything like that. But it was actually enjoyable. And I really liked the uniqueness of the powers they chose here. Like, they weren't always, like, there were some that were not unique, like the laser eyes that Miss Potter has. But the locking ability, that's pretty cool. And the psychic blast is pretty normal, I would say. But still cool, Something you don't see a lot. The fucking demon summoning one really got me. Like, that one was badass to me. And then we had the metabolism's power was pretty cool too. Eating to become the Hulk, basically. It's silly in nature, but it's pretty interesting to still. It's very limiting as well, which is another interesting part about it. But all in all, I would say I enjoyed this, and I would recommend it too if you decide that you want to check it out. It's on Tubi for free. Of course, I just spoiled the whole thing for you, but hey, if you're still going to watch it, I say go for it. Why not? You might enjoy it, But that's about all I have to say on it now. There's not, like I said before, there's not much to find on it online. It hasn't even been rated enough on Rotten Tomatoes to even get a score on there. It's literally only got one review that I found, which is just a 1-star review saying about the bad acting and whatnot. Which I guess I understand, but that wasn't terrible. Like, there's bad acting, and then there's abysmal acting. And this was definitely not abysmal acting. This was just run-of-the-mill bad acting, It's not like anything that's, horrifyingly bad. So, all in all, check it out if you want to. That's all I've got for today. Next time, I'll be looking at a movie called Frankenhooker. And yes, you heard me right. So if that sounds interesting, go ahead and check that out beforehand if you want to see it. It's on Tubi. And then tune in next time to hear about Frankenhooker. If you want to hear my views on it. I enjoyed it, honestly. But we'll save all that for next time. Until then, you can catch me on Twitter at BFE Podcasts, or if you want to send me a suggestion, email me at broadcastfromelsewhere@gmail.com. But I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it so much. This is Enigma, signing off.